What's up everyone, it's Victon, here with a more informal video. We're just going to be chatting about everything Carrion Golems in this video. This isn't going to be my official Carrion Golem League Starter Guide, but do expect that here in the next day at some point. Basically, we're going to be going over all the changes for the patch notes, and the ascendancy changes for both Necromancer and for Elementalist. We're going to be talking about both the Life Elementalist version, like I said, and the Aura Stacking Necromancer version. But before we do that, a ton of people are upset about these nerfs. They're saying Carrion Golems are dead, which actually might help us out in the long run. Maybe some of our items are going to be a little bit cheaper this go around, and I am totally down for that. But let me tell you right now, it is absolutely not dead. Carrion Golems were crazy OP, and they did need a little bit of a tune down. I've been doing a ton of testing and simulations for these nerfs, and our damage is going to be just fine. Even though it's going to be a little bit less, even on day one with little to no gear, we're going to be totally fine. One thing that you can't nerf about Carrion Golem is the playstyle. Running around in circles while your dudes do damage is extremely easy, new player friendly, and it lets you focus on not dying. And that can't be nerfed. And to me, that's one of the best things about Carrion Golems, which is why I still think it's going to be a meta top tier skill. So yeah, let's jump right into the patch notes first off here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Rotten Claws changes. So let's go ahead and search a Rotten Claws here, and we'll just kind of take a look at it. The Cluster Jewel, it used to be a 20% impale chance for your golems, right? And now it is 12%. So that might seem like a lot, but here's how it is. Basically, the aura stacking version, you used to not even need Rotten Claws because you had so much aura effect from all of your medium cluster jewels that when you had all of that aura effect, it affected your generosity dread banner so much that you had enough impale chance from that you didn't even need the Rotten Claws, right? So here it's going to change it a little bit because we are getting a lot less of the aura stacking. Those nodes, they're going to be worth a little bit less, but I'm pretty confident that we still don't need a Rotten Claws in the aura stacking version. If you do, you might need one. I'll have to double check on that, but even if you need one, that's not going to make a huge difference in your DPS. Your DPS is going to be just fine. I don't think this is really going to affect much at all. The next one here is actually just right below here. So Renewal now grants your minions 5% chance to deal double damage. That was 10 before, so basically what that means is it's basically just, so 10%, right? So it used to be basically just a 10% more damage because your minions are almost always going to be on full life, right? So it used to be just a 10% more damage, and you could stack so many of these. You could stack like what, 6 of these, so that's 60% more damage. That is an insane amount. So I think this did need a nerf. The 5% is a pretty hefty nerf. So it's basically 50%, right? So now it's going to be about 30% more damage, whereas it was 60% for the exact same nodes. I think that we're going to change it a little bit. I've done some testing, and actually Renewal is not the best node now for your large cluster jewels. Currently, from my testing, Primordial Bond is the best node for Life Elementalist version, because that's going to give you a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to give you about the exact same damage, but it's also going to give you a bunch of defense, since you're going to get Primordial Bond is a couple different things. It's buff effect from your golems, which in the Elementalist version you have stone golems, you have chaos golems, so it's going to give you a bunch of defenses as well, and it's about the same damage. So overall, on the Life version, I think on the large cluster jewels we're now going to be getting Primordial Bond instead of Renewal. Now on the medium cluster jewels though, we still will be getting Renewal. It's less damage, but it is what it is. I think what we're going to be doing on the medium jewels now is we're going to be going Renewal and Feasting Fiends probably for a little bit more damage, whereas before we might have wanted to take, say, Dread Banner, or I'm sorry, not Dread Banner, what's it called, Dread March for defenses. We're going to have to probably take some offense here, and that's going to even it out a little bit, which Dread March is actually pretty solid. It gives you, I'm sorry, not Dread March, Feasting Fiends is actually pretty solid. It's going to give you damage, it's going to give your golems a little bit of life, and it's going to give them life leech. So pretty good, especially when you get into the higher the in-game stuff, and that life leech does help quite a bit. For the medium cluster jewels, it's not even going to affect it for the Necromancer because you're not using the minion jewels for your mediums, you're using the aura stacking one, so it's not even going to affect it there. I do think you might want to use Renewal still for your Necromancer aura stacking as your main instead of Primordial Bonds. I think that's what we'll probably do, since you're not using Chaos Golems, you're not using Stone Golems, so the damage wise it's good, and you also get that 1% life regen from from renewal, which helps pretty much on your, since you have so much energy shield, it's just more energy shield regen per second. So I think that's what you'll probably do on that one. Overall though, it's not that huge of a nerf. We did so much damage before that it's just not that big of a deal. Since we're actually right here as well, we'll talk about this. The cluster jewel, notable from first among equals, is now 8% instead of 10%. That's barely even noticeable. This is going to be huge, I think, getting this 8%, since, let's see, small cluster jewels. Where was the other one? So basically, and I'll just say it. So for the aura stacking for your mediums, they used to be 6% aura per notable, right? And all those aura stacking big boys were getting like that 35% increased effect, and it was taking it up to 8%. So it's not going to be like that anymore. It's going to be 3% instead of 6%. So basically a half nerf. So all the people that were getting 400% aura effect, which was massive, they're not going to be getting 200%. So that's why this is going to be a pretty big notable here for the first among equals with the 8%, and that's also giving you some life regen or energy shield regen since you're in the Necromancer version. So I think a lot of people are going to be doing the same thing with the aura stacking those cluster jewels for the Necromancer version, but they're going to be getting less aura effect, so we're going to be definitely wanting to get this 8%, and that's going to be not that big of a difference, to be honest. It's going to affect your damage, since the little passives going up to that is 3% instead of 6%. So yes, it's a damage nerf, but seriously guys, it's not that big of a deal. We already do so much damage that it's not going to be that meaningful. When you kill a boss in 1 second, and all these nerfs, now you kill the boss in 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds, that really doesn't matter. So it's totally fine in my opinion. So let's type in here Carrion. Let's just look at the Carrion Golem nerfs in general, right? So summon Carrion Golems now deal approximately 20% less damage at all levels. So that's just a basic 20% nerf around the board for Carrion Golems. I thought it was going to be more like 50%. So I'm actually happy that it's the 20%. That's not bad at all, to be honest. It's not bad at all. That's not anything that would make me not want to play this build at all. So one of the things that I've done, you can actually go into Path of Building and you can make this line, you could put it in there, just say minions deal 20% less damage, and I've checked to see like what the numbers are with the new gem, and it's fine. I'll show you here in a little bit. We'll go into the Path of Building and I'll show you guys what I'm looking at for my League starter, and I do have this already calculated in there. Basically everything that I've done for my League starter that I'm currently working on for Carrion Golems, I have made all of these changes that are all of the nerfs, they're in there, so it's going to be very accurate damage numbers. So we'll go over that in a little bit here. So let's talk about a few other things though that they nerfed in this build. So like the They of Toll, we use these specters, right? Maybe let's not type they, let's type Toll. Yeah, so right here, so specter versions of They of Toll. We used to use these specters. What we would do, we would do, if you had 4 specters total, you would do 2 Carnage Chieftains, you would do 1 Host Chieftain, and you would do 1 They of Toll. And it was fantastic, very good for AFKing Blights, because they popped down that little ginormous Ice Nova looking effect, and it gave you damage reduction, and it was incredibly strong. So that no longer gives you damage reduction and grants 15% chance to dodge attacks from 20. So just a massive nerf in general. So you don't get that at all, and you get even less dodge chance. So I'm not sure we'll be using this. We might still use it. I'm not 100% sure. I think what we might do instead of this is maybe just throw in an Arena Master. And those aren't huge either, but they give you a little bit of attack speed, a little bit of movement speed, and a little bit of damage for your minions. So maybe we might do that instead. Moving on to we already talked about the Aura Cluster effect. So let's go ahead and talk about the actual just Necromancer in general, right? So here's Elementalist. Let's go ahead and go over to Necromancer, and we'll talk about kind of the changes on here. I was extremely surprised. Very little changes at all that affect us. I think it's like what, 20% minion damage, just like flat. Like it's not more damage, it's additional increased damage, so it's almost literally nothing. So we would get this, mindless aggression, we would get a natural strength, same thing, not a big deal here. And we would also get Commander of Darkness. This was the one that I thought was going to get butchered. This is what makes aura stacking huge, right? So that 3% increased attack and cast speed, that is what gets buffed by your auras, and you have so many auras when you do the aura stacking build as well that they're getting so much attack speed. I thought they were going to nerf that. I thought it was going to be like 2%. I thought it was going to be 2%, and even at 2% I think it's still good, but the fact that they didn't even touch it, that's crazy to me. The only things they really touched was these minion damage. So minions deal 10%, it used to be 15%. That's nothing. That literally does nothing. The other thing is the bone barrier, so we usually get that. I have been tooling with, instead of bone barrier, it is nice for defenses, but actually going with plague bringer. So I think I actually probably would do this instead. So if you've consumed a corpse recently, you and your minions have a lot of area of effect, so that's really good for clear speed, which Carrion Golems kind of lack. It's not a whole lot of area effect, but it's a little bit. With at least one nearby corpse, you and your nearby allies do 10% more damage, so that's a pretty big buff right there. Or not buff, they didn't change it. What I'm saying is that's pretty big compared to what we used to do. We used to didn't take this at all, so a 10% damage increase flat is pretty big. With at least one nearby corpse, nearby enemies deal 10% reduced damage, so that's pretty big as well. So we're going to be taking 10% less damage with that. I think this is a pretty solid node. So I'm going to take this probably instead of bone barrier if I do a Necromancer aura stacking version. Let's go over to the Elementalists. But I mean, just real quick before we leave, barely any changes here. Very surprised. This is going to be still very good. The actual ascendancy is very good. So let's go over on to Elementalist. Let's make sure we can spell correctly. Elementalist. All right, here we go. So there's a lot of changes to the Elementalist, and actually we got some big nerfs and we got some big buffs. So an Elementalist, you're going to be using the life version. Like I said, the Necromancer, you're using the low life aura stacking version, right? And they differ for sure. The Elementalist is a life version that focuses on lots of golems, and you're also using Chaos Golem and Stone Golem, so you get lots of life regen, but more importantly, that Chaos Golem, because you have so many golems and you have so much buff effect for your golems, is giving you a ton of armor, or not armor, but physical damage mitigation. So you end up with about 80 to 90% physical damage reduction, which is absolutely huge. Going this build, and that's kind of what you focus on. You have a kind of a little bit of a low life pool, anywhere between 4 and 5.5k, but you have tons of mitigation for physical, so pretty good. And you usually have max chaos res on this one as well. But let's go over the nodes themselves. So for this guy right here, Liege of the Primordial, one thing to note is we didn't lose any golems, right? So we still have the +1 to maximum golem here, and we have +1 to maximum golem here. Liege of Primordial, Elementalist. So let's take a look down here though. They did, as you can see, they did so many different changes. Most of it is changes for, like, if you're a spellcaster and not the golem, but they did make some here. So Liege of Primordial, they added 25% increased damage per summoned golem. They removed the summoned golems. Well, hold on. 20% increased damage per golem. That's right. So they're not immune to elemental damage anymore, and we're never going to be using this. We're never going to be doing summoned golems or resummon in the past 4 seconds. You don't have enough mana for that. So that's kind of a terrible change in my opinion. I guess that's just a full-on nerf, a slap in the face on that one. No one that I know is resummoning golems, so that's pretty much worthless. Increased damage per summoned golem. That's a little bit of a buff on that one, 25% increased damage. So we have 6 golems, so 6 times 25, so it's quite a bit right there. So that was that one. Not a lot of changes on that one. We're just not immune to elemental damage, which isn't a huge deal. It made them incredibly tanky before, but I think that they're really still not going to die because they have such high gem level that their health pool is crazy. It's like upwards of 70 to 80k health per golem. They just don't die, especially when you have a little bit of life leech. So Elementalist, so let's find that down here on this list. So summoned golems are immune to elemental damage. Wow, I didn't really notice that. So we have that now. It's just on the next node right there. And then they remove, here we go, so they remove that increased golem damage per summoned golem. Whereas you were doubling up on that, now it's just on this one node right here. But we still get this immune. But like I said, it's really not even that big of a deal. I don't think they're ever going to die anyway. So not really a big deal. But no changes there, really, that are massive to us outside of the removing of the 20%. So 20% reduction, right? So 20% reduced golem damage per summoned golem. You have 6, so that's 120% reduced golem damage. So I did the math and it comes out to about 19% overall less damage. So basically it's a big nerf. It's a 19% less damage for your golems. But again, it's just not enough to make it to where that's making that big of a deal. We still do so much damage that it's not a big deal, and I'll show you that when we go over the path of building. Yes, it's a nerf, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. One of the good things though that did change was this right here. So triggers a level 20 primal Aegis when allocated. That's huge. So primal Aegis can take 100 damage per allocated notable on the passive skill tree. So what that means is, and I've checked, I think we have about anywhere between 26 and 28 notable passives in our skill tree when we have a full build. So that means that you have a 26 to 2800 shield every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds you have a massive shield that just replenishes over and over, and it's passive. You don't even have to do anything with it. So really solid. Cannot take reflected elemental damage. That's whatever. We're not dealing any damage, so that doesn't matter. But having that shield is huge, especially because we usually have a low life pool on the life version of the Elementalist. So it's essentially kind of like a bone armor, right? So bone armor gives you about 2200 shield, kind of like that, right? So now we're gonna have a 2600 at minimum shield, so even better than bone armor. And I was thinking maybe even you do like an Elementalist with, you have like this 2600 shield, and you also can throw in a steel skin there, and that's another 2200. So you're looking at almost 5000 shield like every 5 seconds. That's pretty solid, especially for the fact that we only have about 4 to 5k life. So that's a huge damage boost. I'm sorry, it's a huge defensive boost. Very good change right there. And typically Elementalist doesn't really get that much other stuff outside of these main 2 nodes, right? That's nice to have, but there's outside of that, these nodes are really not that good. It sucks that the area of effect is now way back here, so we can't get that. These 3 are super awesome for spellcaster builds, but they do nothing for us. You know, I was trying to think of your hits always shock, so I was trying to think maybe if we can hit somewhere we can shock, but it's just really not going to work. So what I came up with is I think we just do 2 of these small points instead of 2 getting some of the big ones. We just do 2 of these small. So increased effect of lightning elements from skitterbots, so that'll help with your shock, and again skitterbots increased effect of cold elements, so that helps with your chilled. So if you're using skitterbots, these 2 nodes is probably pretty decent. It's not that big of a deal, but it's a little bit of a boost. So not too bad changes for the Elementalist. A big boost in defenses, but definitely a reduction in damage. But it's not enough to really make it that much of a deal. So let's go over our league starter that we're kind of looking at right now. So let me pull up Path of Building here. And this is just kind of me jotting down some stuff. Again, this is not my final Path of Building, and this is only Elementalist. I haven't worked on Necromancer, though I think it's going to be pretty similar to what it was last league. It's just some very small changes as far as the actual cluster jewels themselves. We're basically just losing damage. We're not actually changing that much. But for the Elementalist version, we can kind of go over just a couple things on just kind of my thoughts behind some of this stuff. As you can tell over here, though, this is with, and I'll show you the gear in a second, this is with day 1 Mega Poop gear, okay? Mega Poop gear. And we're at 716 combined damage. And I have, by the way, I have no Primordial Jewels. I think the only one I have is Primordial Might, because that should always be the first one that you buy. Hopefully as well, since people are not liking Carrion Golems right now, these actually might be cheaper than normal. So I'm looking forward to that, to see what the price is on these. But you can see, look, I have no other Primordial Jewels, right? So we have the 2 from Elementalist. We have 1 from here, so that's 4, and we're actually going to be rocking 2 Clay Shapers. Super cheap weapons. They're usually like 6 to 10 chaos on day 1 and 2. Easy peasy. So what I would do is that should be your first 2 purchases. Just get those, and then Might next. But the gear's hella poop, right? Hella poop, and we're at 716. And I think what you do, you probably do 6 Carrion Golems. You'll have 6 total Golems. I think you do all 6 with Carrion Golems for the first few days until you get all of your Primordial Jewels, and once you have your Anima Stone, that gives you an extra 2 Golems, and I think at that point you go ahead and switch off and you do the 4 Carrion Golem, 1 Chaos Golem, 1 Stone Golem combo, because at that point you might also have some better weapons. You might have those Cold Iron Point daggers, which probably are going to be a little bit rough expensive wise, because I know a lot of people are going Poison and like Blade Blast and Blade Vortex, so those might be a little expensive, but we'll have to see. Either way though, like I said, hella poop gear, and we're at 716,000 damage per. So let's look at what that is. Let me pull out my handy dandy calculator right here. 716,000 damage times 6 is right under 4.3 million damage on day 1 with hella poop gear. You can't tell me that that's not super solid. There are very few builds that even get above 1 million damage on day 1, and we have 4.3. So the build is not dead. I know a lot of people are freaking out because they see the numbers and it seems scary, and it is. It was definitely a huge dip there. I think overall we probably lost about 40% total damage as an Elementalist. You lose a little bit less on the Auramancer Necro side. But the reason I like doing an Elementalist is because it's just a little bit easier to gear out. You don't have to spend as much currency. It's extremely cheap. It's just the clay shapers. That's all you have to buy. Whereas going the Necromancer, you start having to buy some of the other gear, and it gets a little bit more expensive. So typically what I do is I even start as a Necro. I start as an Elementalist. I do this full build, maybe around like 90 to 95 in there. Then I might change to an Aura stacking Necromancer, but maybe still not, because you still have good defenses. You got that at day 1, you have 35% physical damage reduction. That goes up to about 70 to 80% once you start filling in your Primordial Jewels. So once you have like a bunch of Primordial Eminences, your physical damage reduction will skyrocket. And this also with poop gear, I'm capped on resistances, and I have 51% chaos res, so also pretty good. And I have, where's my life regen? So I've got 590, about 600 right now. Again, once you have all your Primordial Jewels, that jumps up to like 1200. So really good life regen as well. Overall, I think this is going to be a fantastic league starter. I am not worried about it at all. Super cheap, tons of damage. I think we're just fine. I think people are overreacting, but honestly, let's let them overreact. Let's not say anything. Even though I'm making a video right now, let's not say anything. Let's not make a big change so that everybody doesn't want to buy these Golem Jewels and we can buy them for ourselves. Let's try and do that, because those get really expensive. Last league, they were crazy expensive. That's understandable for some people, right? And that's why I specifically made sure to not put any of those in here. Once you get those, your damage is just going to go up. I think what I did was I messed around with my in-game build for Life Elementalist, and I used to have 9.6 million damage per Carrion Golem in my fully min-maxed in-game build, and it dropped down to about 4.8. So a big nerf, right? But 4.8 times 4, so we're looking at probably like 20 to 22 million Shaper DPS. That's still totally fine. That is still fantastic. You're going to be destroying everything under the sun, so I'm just not worried about it. So also, I have not done the Necromancer version, like I said, so we don't have to go over that. It's very small changes though, as far as the build. I'll put out an official build guide for it for a league starter, so don't worry about that. That'll come out probably within the next day. Here, definitely before the league starts. But really the only changes from like last league's league starter as a Necromancer or a stacker is just the damage values. We're not actually changing any of the way that we're building the character, the progression of gear. None of that's changing. It's just going to be slightly less damage and slightly less like energy shield regen. And one of the other things about Necromancer though is we're not getting, remember over here how this lost increased damage? It's like 120% increased golem damage. You don't have to deal with that on the Necromancer, so that's about a 20% overall flat nerf to golems over here. You don't have to deal with that on the Necromancer, so not too bad. I think Necromancer is very solid, and I think Elementalist is very solid with that, the new Bastion of Elements, getting a lot of damage reduction from that big boy shield. So I think both are very strong. I think in-game, I might lean towards maybe the Auramancer still being probably a bit stronger, especially with fully min-maxed gear. I do think you'll still have quite a bit more damage with this. Defense-wise, they're going to also be that. I think I've done the math, and I think you only get 89% max all res instead of the old 90%. Because of the nerfs to those medium clusters. So, but I mean, still, right? 89% max all resistances is totally fine. Not a huge steal. I think you lost about 200 to 300. I think it was like 200 ES regen per second, but same thing, not a huge steal. So it's about 1,000 ES regen per second, which is pretty big. And then remember that we're also adding in Plaguebringer, I think, which is going to give more damage. And less damage taken instead of Bone Barrier. So I think that's going to be a good change. That kind of counterbalances the damage we've lost a little bit with a little bit more damage. And basically, just so you guys know, what you would do with that is you just have a level 1 Desecrate, right? And you throw that up all over the place. So especially like a boss where there's no dead bodies around you guys, you would just throw up a Desecrate and there's a corpse nearby you, and there you go. Your allies do 10% more damage, so you're carrying golems, and you guys all take 10% reduced damage, which is pretty big. So that's elemental damage and that's physical damage, so pretty big. I think this node is pretty strong, and I think that's probably it for now. Let me just make sure here. Like I mentioned over when we were talking about renewal, the new jewels that I think we're using on the big clusters, the large one is just 1 Rotten Claws. Obviously, this is the day 1 build, right? So you can just roll this super easy with alterations. A single Rotten Claw, not going to take you that many. Eventually, you would probably want like a Vicious Bite and a Feasting Fiend, or maybe even a Renewal, Primordial Bond, Vicious Bite, something like that. That's probably your in-game one. So that's a ton of damage. And then for these, I'm going with Renewal, Feasting Fiends, which is actually pretty easy to craft as well yourself. You get that, you basically you hit Renewal, you augment, and then you get Feasting Fiends on the Regal, and it actually happens quite frequently because Feasting Fiends rolls quite a bit, so that's not going to be too hard to get that jewel. I'm curious how the expensive the Necromancer aura stacking jewels are going to be. They're usually semi-expensive, right? Especially those eye level 85, which you don't even really need, or 84, I'm sorry. But I'm curious if the price is going to go way down or not. But I do think this medium cluster jewel is going to be pretty cheap to get, and definitely this one's going to be cheap to get. And so let's see. So here's the issue. So calculations. And just so you guys know, right, so I'm very particular about making sure that the damage is as accurate as possible. So I do a lot of work in configuration, a lot of work in the calcs to make sure everything's right. So as we were talking about with Impale, right, so we lost the 100% chance. Now we're at 96% chance. That's the highest that you can get. Let's check something together real quick. One sec. So let's go to skills and let's go to Dread Banner. I'm curious about one thing. So Dread Banner's alternate quality normal is aura effect. Okay, so it's actually a little bit of a boost here. So if you get a Divergent Dread Banner, you get that 100% impale chance. So let's put that on there. It's probably gonna, it's not a huge steal. So especially early on, you're not gonna have Divergent Dread Banner, but in game, you would probably put that on. And then if you have that, let's check calcs. You'll be at 100%. So there you go. It doesn't even affect us. Let's take it off for now because not many people are going to have Divergent day 1. So let's go to default. Very good. Yeah, so that's the mediums. That's the larges. You have 100% or 96% impale. With the aura stacking version, you have 100% impale. You're just fine. So no changes there. I think that pretty much covers it, guys. If you made it this far, I appreciate you guys sticking through. Definitely be on the lookout for my Carrion Golem Life Elementalist League Starter Guide and my Necromancer aura stacking league starter guide. Those will be coming out in the next couple days. It'll be a more official video, a little bit more kind of put together. I'll have some leveling tips in there as well, with gems and how you kind of level up the build, and also how you progress your gear, what you buy first, what you buy second, what you buy third, all that good stuff. So if y'all are interested, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, definitely subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and you will be told when these videos come live. I'm also going to be streaming. I have not 100% decided what my league starter will be. I mean, for you guys, well, what are y'all's league starters? What do y'all think they're going to be? Let me know in the comments, because I'm trying to still decide myself. But I'm going to be streaming starting Thursday night. We're going to be doing a ton of build reviews. So in a couple days here, come in the stream, hang out. We're going to be doing Path of Building build reviews all night long. Friday, we're going to be streaming 24/7 for the whole weekend. So if you guys have any questions about Carrion Golems, about any summoner in general, specters, right? I'm going to be doing a spectre league starter guide, and I have a super top secret spectre in-game build, which is still doing, what, 9 million DPS per spectre, and you have 4. So that's quite a bit, even after the nerfs. So I'm going to be doing one of those as well. So if you have any questions about that, definitely come in, hang out in the stream. My Twitch is linked below. Along with some other links like my Patreon, all that good stuff, if y'all are interested in supporting the channel. Ask questions. I am all about helping you guys out if y'all have questions. I never think a question is too dumb or anything like that. I'm more about helping out, especially new players. I love it when new players ask questions and I can help them out and they get excited. They want to play more Path of Exile. And that's one of the reasons I think Carrion Golems, like I said in the beginning, is such a good build. It's very good for new players. So if you have new players coming into the league, you can always recommend them Carrion Golems. Even now with the nerfs, definitely still recommend them Carrion Golems. You just do a decent amount of damage, definitely still more than most other builds, and you just literally run in circles while things die, and you can focus on not dying yourself, learning the boss mechanics, learning maps, all that good stuff. It's just an overall fantastic build that I think people are definitely overreacting on. I think it's going to be just fine. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this one. I will catch you all in the next one. See you guys.